Hello, and welcome to the Perry Connection. I'm your host, Jessie Barth, and our guest in the studio is Josh Rice. Welcome, Josh.
Hi, thanks so much for having me today.
Oh, we're so thrilled to have you on the Perry Connection.
Good.
Because you have a real Perry connection.
That I do.
Can you talk
yeah.
about that?
Yeah, sure. So I was born and raised in Silver Lake, New York, and went to Perry High School. So this is kind of my hometown where I'm from, and for a while I left to go pursue theater and acting in different cities. And then in 2012 I came back and started a theater company, and since then I've kind of been here inserting myself into the art scene in Perry. So
And boy, are we glad you are.
I certainly appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, you've got a real talent, and I think you're very smart.
Thanks.
And that's reflected in your productions, and we'll talk about that in the sort of the middle segment of the show. But can you tell me about your high school experience? Who were your mentors? Who inspired you to go into theater? How did that happen?
Well, I wish I could say it happened in high school.
Okay,
I think
just be honest.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because you get those aptitude tests when you're in like 10th grade, and you kind of fill them out with what your interests are, and that kind of gives you like what your ideal profession is going to be. And mine was artist. And I always thought it would be really exciting to be an artist, but I didn't really know anything outside of visual art as a possibility in the arts. And I think that was mostly just because of what I was exposed to in my orbit. I didn't really get involved in any of the drama productions at Perry, and nor was it really made very clear to me that that was an option or a possibility. So the majority of the theatrical exposure I had was on television. So Saturday Night Live, comedy, and I feel a little embarrassed by this, but also like professional wrestling. I always thought that was so much fun and ridiculous and over the top, and I understood even from a young age that it was, theatrical. It was very fake. Right? It was all staged. So then I went to college in...
And where was that?
SUNY Brockport.
Okay.
And I was lucky enough to be a part of an honors program called the Delta College, in which you were made to have a local internship, a national internship, and then an international internship in order to graduate. So that's why I went there, because the thought of traveling internationally really intrigued me, even when I was 17. I started studying pre-med, and then quickly changed to television broadcasting, because I thought, I would really love to be a host on Sports Center or something someday. Okay. And then I realized that TV was not necessarily the medium that I wanted to be a part of.
And why was that?
Well, I think at that particular time, it just didn't quite fulfill that creative thing that I was lying dormant inside of me, I think. And
okay, I just want to stop. So it was lying dormant. You didn't even really know that this creative element was a part of you.
Yeah, I mean, I think...
Isn't it interesting how it's there, but we don't even necessarily know?
Yeah. I mean, when I was a younger kid working at the Corral when I was 15, I used to... Rick would allow me to go and perform karaoke when I was working in the arcade. And I would go out and I would dance and entertain and just had such a fun time doing it. But I had no idea that I could parlay that into a career in any way. I just wasn't aware that that translated to theater. So there was always this ability to entertain people. And I loved to make people laugh in high school. I was the class clown of my class.
And
the
you
yearbook.
sing too, obviously.
I don't sing well, but I would never ask people to pay to hear it. But I've done a lot of musicals actually in my past. But it's not something that I would say. I'm a professional singer, but I love to sing, and I love to dance, and I love to perform and entertain. And even in high school, I would perform at the pep rallies in my school. But again, I just never knew how to translate this into something, and just wasn't aware that there was theater, as a possibility. So I went to school, was finally exposed to the improv troupe at SUNY Brockport. And that to me was like, oh my gosh, whose line is it anyway?
Right.
And now there's like people in my school doing it. I want to be a part of this.
Right.
So I started to get to know them, and then my international internship came up. And I started to study more theater at that time, and they found something for me at the BBC in Wales, in Cardiff.
Really?
And I was like, I don't know if I'm necessarily interested in Cardiff. I would love to actually be in London. So they found me another internship at a experimental theater in South London, and I was like, maybe. So they finally came back with a third option, and they're like, Shakespeare's Globe Theater in the education department. And I was like,
Bingo.
I don't know much about Shakespeare, but I know that I should not turn this down.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I went as a young 20-year-old, and during the days would work in the education department, and Mark Rylance was still there at the time as the artistic director.
What did you do in the educational department?
So I kind of helped prepare materials for some of the classes that were coming in and out at the Globe, and then of course like menial tasks like organizing this library and like getting coffee for these people.
Right.
And then I got to actually assist teaching some classes as well, which was unbelievably exciting to me. And that's where I also learned to sword fight. There were classes on the weekends where you could learn basic hand-to-hand combat and rapier and dagger technique. So starting to do that kind of like keyed into that whole wrestling thing that I have, where I was like, oh my gosh, physical like things, they're really fun. Like this is really speaking to me in kind of this intuitive level where you know it even though you'd never done it before. It just kind of felt so familiar. So then I came back to the United States for my senior year, and then just kind of invested full in, and I auditioned for 3 things my senior year: Sam Shepard's True West, the African Dance and Drum Ensemble, and the improv troupe. And I got into all 3 things, and then from that point on, theater has been my vocation, and I've never not done that as my actual job for the last 15 years. I've always done something in the field, whether I'm teaching or performing, and have been
You can do both.
And have.
Yeah.
I have. That's how I've made my living for the last 15 years, and I'm very grateful for that, because not a lot of people get to do that and say that is the primary way that they're doing that, and I'm very lucky to be able to say that.
And we as a community are very fortunate to have you back in town, and I'm sure your parents, can you just talk a little bit about your parents? And
Sure.
I'm sure they love having you here.
I think they do. I mean, part of the reason that I came back in 2012 is actually a really long story, if you'd like to hear parts of that, but it relates to my parents. And in 2011, I was in a play at a children's theater. I was a children's theater company member for about 7 years.
And where was that?
This was in Little Rock, Arkansas.
I thought, okay.
Yeah, the Arkansas Arts Center Children's Theater. And I was performing in a play called If You Give a Pig a Pancake. And I was the female pig character, dressed in a giant pink nightmare. And there was a scene in which we had to do this tap dance sequence. So I learned to tap dance for the show. And as part of the scene, I was wearing this baby blue sweater dress. And we tap dance, and then the next scene is like this tableau of her taking photos of me in these different positions. And the very last one is supposed to look like me on top of a tightrope. And as I'm up there balancing, and it was just a 2x4, it wasn't really an actual tightrope, and it's just 2D scenery to make it look like all of this furniture is stacked up on one another, and there's this pig balancing. 38 times, it went totally fine. The 39th time, I started to lose my balance. So I looked, and I could either fall backward, or I could fall kind of straight to the floor, and there was a gap between like where the stage was and then the floor and then this piece of scenery. So I would land on the floor and the audience wouldn't see it. So I was like, all right, well, I should just go to the floor and I'll be fine. So I fall off, and in the tap shoes, which are covered with metal soles, I immediately hit the ground and I break both my feet.
Oh.
I crawl off stage, the interns on the sides are like, what do we do? And I was like, I don't know, what do we do? So in the adrenaline rush of the moment and not sure what to do, I took my feet out of the tap shoes, put them back in my show shoes, went back on, finished the next 20 minutes of the play on 2 broken feet. And then I couldn't walk for 4 months.
Okay.
So the show must go on, but at what cost, I guess, to me. And during that time, I had a lot of time. I'm not a sedentary person, so to be made to be still was really tough for me. And I went through a big process of trying to decide if theater was really the path that I wanted to stay on. And that was when I was about 30 years old, and a time when I think a lot of artists either invest full in, or they're like, it's time for a career change because this is too hard.
Right.
And I had a lot of time to think about that. And I got an offer to take a job that wasn't really in theater. And thankfully, one of the woman who was interviewing me, who knew me well, was like, Josh, we'd love to hire you, and this would be great. You'd be a great fit for this. But if you got a call from the second city, would you take that job, or would you stay with us? And I was like, you're right. Thanks for the offer. I'm going to pass, and I'm going to invest full time. So I started looking at grad schools. And when I came back to Silver Lake, and I could walk again and I could ride my bike, I started riding my bike around the lake. And I was like, it'd be really amazing to be able to come back here every summer and do something. And I could see my family on a more regular basis. So getting back to my parents, and kind of spend more time with them, and maybe even do a show. So I reached out to Pilar McKay, who I saw was kind of active on Facebook and some of the stuff that was...
Were you in high school together?
We wrote for the high school newspaper together.
Okay.
And I hadn't seen her in many years, but I saw she was active in some of the things that were happening in Perry, and saw there's kind of a revitalization on Main Street with the bookstore, and at the time it was an outdoor store had just opened up, and the hole in the wall was kind of coming back with this new redesign.
Meat market.
And the meat market, exactly. So I was like, I want to be a part of something. So I said, hey, do you think Perry would be able to, or be willing to, support a Shakespeare festival? She then proceeded to speak with the Arts Council, the mayor, and your husband, Dick. Yeah. And they all came back with enthusiastic yeses, and here's a grant to apply
for. Gosh. Good for them.
To which I said, oh no, now I have to do this. And I was thinking maybe like 2 years after grad school, and instead we did it right then and there. So Shake on the Lake started in 2012 as I was moving from Little Rock to New York City to start grad school, and we did our first year. And then have been doing it ever since.
Yeah, yes, and I saw the production that first year.
Yeah.
So much fun.
Thank you.
And isn't it wonderful? You take all the different parts of your life, and certainly the experience in London with the Globe Theatre, and to bring that home, literally bring it home.
Yeah.
And then to create something from that is now being exported all around the Western New York, right?
Correct, yeah. We're in 8 counties of Western New York touring our show now.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, so we were really fortunate the community was so supportive of that first year where we were doing just that one show.
And it was...
the complete works of William Shakespeare abridged. Like the Monty Python of Shakespeare. So again, it's those early influences, I think, of like improv kind of feeling, structure, where it feels like we're making it all up, and you're like expert idiots in Shakespeare. Also the Shakespeare influence, there was some sword fighting. It's very slapsticky, so it's got so many like...
certainly Shakespeare at the lake.
Absolutely.
Shake at the lake.
Shake on the Lake.
That's great. How did you come up with that title?
Shakespeare on Silver Lake. So just Shake on the Lake.
And it was like, that's it.
Yeah,
it's perfect.
And trying to find something that was fun, and kind of fit our style, which was trying to not take Shakespeare too seriously, because that's something we also knew was we want to make it fun for people, and I think people have that fear of Shakespeare because of the way it's often taught in high schools, and it's a different language and it sounds funny. So this felt like the right show to introduce the community to it. There's just enough of the language, but also we're making fun of the language. We're making fun of Shakespeare himself and ourselves in the process, presenting the show. And I think that really won people over. So part of the plan was introduce it in this way. Then we can start to slowly work in real Shakespeare shows and continue to do them in this style that we really liked, which is small cast playing many parts, physical, fun, 90 minutes or less. And because we perform outdoors on Silver Lake, we have a limited amount of natural light to work with. So, the show starts at 6:30. We got to be done by 8 or else the sun is setting. So I think there's something
There
really
you go.
nice about that limitation for
Yeah.
us. And I think it's good for an audience too. So, they're
That's
not
great.
subjected to
Right.
a really, really long evening of something that maybe they might be unfamiliar with. And instead, we try to make it really fun, physical, accessible storytelling. And we're not afraid to put modern references into it and really interact with the audience and bring them into the piece, which is exactly what Shakespeare did in his time.
Exactly.
So we're actually doing a lot of original Shakespearean practices, even though people might see it and be like, why are they saying this? Well, those actors were improvising all of the time based on who was in the crowd and what was happening politically. So, we are actually doing something that I think is actually
it's
true
very
to
authentic.
the form. Exactly. Yeah.
Now, we could go on and on because
We could.
that is a huge success.
Well, thank you. I
But you've
appreciate
got something else, and I have it right here. Joe, if you want to just key in on that. This is a puppet festival.
Right.
As if you just won't sit on your laurels, will you? You have to be. Now we have Shaking the Lake and the Perry Puppet Festival.
Yeah, the
Is
New
that
York State Puppet Fest.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah,
New York
State Puppet
State.
Festival.
Tell us about that.
Puppetry was something that I started to, again, if we're talking about early influences, Kermit the Frog and the Muppet Show is something I started watching, and when I was a boy, when I was 5 and 6 years old. And my favorite ornament that I still have on my Christmas tree at my parents' house is a Miss Piggy ornament.
Oh, Miss Piggy.
Yeah. So my mom did a really nice job of introducing me to really cool things when I was really young.
Yes.
So the Muppets were always kind of an influence, but I never really knew that puppetry would kind of become any part of my life until I went to graduate school. And again, there was another moment of, trying this thing through a teacher, Dan Hurlin, who's going to be a part of our festival. He's the head of the program, also this really incredible puppet artist in New York City.
And what school did you?
Sarah Lawrence.
Sarah Lawrence, okay.
Yep. And Dan was teaching this puppet class, and I had heard of his work and knew that he was kind of really important as far as puppetry goes, and that I would be ashamed to not take a class. So I took his class, and when I first started doing it, it takes 3 people to work this specific kind of Japanese style of puppet. So you have a person on the feet, and a person on the hip and the hand, and another person on the other hand and the head. And you have to work as a team to make this figure come to life, and it was physical and difficult and spiritual in this way because you are giving yourself over to this object to bring it to life. And again, it just really resonated with something inside me, like I knew this in some way, shape, or form. So I started to really pursue it a lot more and took more classes, as many as I could at Sarah Lawrence, and then started doing shows at Sarah Lawrence that had puppetry components in them. And what was so nice is I think my professors really saw my ability to work hard, but also my passion for the form. And
I think too, you bring a joy to what you do. I'm sure they see that too. I mean, with passion, to me, there seems to be a joy component.
Sure,
and that's very attractive. So I'm sure they saw that in you, and
I mean, I think
you.
Oh, I appreciate that. Maybe they did. I think I'm a playful person in general, and I think if you're doing something you love, you are probably exuding some sort of joy. I think in the work, and I feel grateful that is something that I've been able to have in my life. Always being able to do what I love. And to be able to share that with other people, and these professors to see something that they love, and me also kind of, vibing on the same thing that they're teaching, they've been able to find professional opportunities for me. So in that time, I've kind of parlayed some of that work and have puppeteered with the New York Philharmonic Orchestra, and they were accompanying me as a puppeteer.
Oh, wow.
Which is a crazy thing to be able to say. And
What
that
was the piece that you were doing?
Stravinsky's Petrushka.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah, I was with a company called Giants Are Small that did the puppetry components, and then right behind me is the entire New York Philharmonic Orchestra, and just gives me shivers thinking
Yeah.
about it.
God.
It's really incredible.
Yeah.
And I've been able to work with a fifth generation Japanese puppet master on a show, and we've toured that show since that time from New York to Japan to Hawaii to all across the United States. And that was an opportunity of a lifetime, and I'm blessed to be able to say that he's now my friend, and this puppet master is now coming to Perry, New York to share what he does with audiences here in Western New York.
Now, can you talk about how the festival is laid out?
Yeah.
So, if a person wants to take it all in, is there something every night? Is it weekends?
Right.
What?
So the festival runs the 14th to the 24th of June, and we decided New York State Puppet Festival because there isn't one in all of New York State, so why not call it that, and why not make it here in Perry, New York? Again, this is where I'm from, and I want this place to be as interesting as I possibly can make it while I'm here and as a part of it. So the festival will start on the 14th. There will be an exhibition at the Arts Council for Wyoming County of a puppet artist's work, Dan Herlin, who I mentioned earlier. His work has never been put up in a museum anywhere before.
Oh, great.
He is a Guggenheim Fellow. He is an Alpert Award winner. He's an Obie Award winner. He won a Rome Prize for his work in his lifetime. And we are getting the first version of some of his work in a museum ever at the Arts Council for Wyoming County here in town. And then there's a documentary about his work called Puppet, so we'll be screening that as well. So that'll be our opening night, which I think will be a really nice way to introduce the community
And is
to
that
puppetry.
the 14th?
That's on the 14th.
Okay.
And then on the 15th, we start with our shows. You'll be able to see shows almost every single night of the festival except for our Monday, the 18th. But otherwise, there'll be shows in the afternoons, there'll be shows in the evenings.
And you need tickets?
And there will be tickets, and you can get them at the NewYorkStatePuppetFestival.org.
Okay.
And you can find that information online there. We also have workshops that will be open to the public in different kinds of puppet making. Some of them will be marionette workshops. Some will be Balinese shadow puppetry workshops. Some will be with a fifth-generation Japanese puppet master in cart puppetry. Some of them will be in shadow puppetry. So we have all sorts of offerings for the community that we're really thrilled to be able to bring to the table.
And will this all be at theaters at 37?
Theater at 37 will be the main venue, which is here in Perry, New York, right on Main Street.
Yeah, and I have to say that's a very intimate space.
Yes.
So you will really have that experience to be right there.
Yeah, you'll be able to see everything.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Are you going to have crowd control? People beating down the door to get in, you know?
Yeah, I'll have my very large brothers be there as security for the event.
Good.
So it'll be fun.
Oh, well, that's great.
Yeah.
And so what do you hope to do with this? Will this be an annual event? Is this a one-time thing? Or, have you even thought about?
Well, the hope is that it will be a biennial event, so every 2 years.
Great.
And I'm realizing right now, trying to produce 2 events in the same summer, this and Shake on the Lake is proving to be a lot. So we'll see how well I can pull it off and maintain my sanity. But it's good work. It's work that I am proud to be able to present to the community, to partner with the community in as well, because we couldn't do it without the Perry Main Street Association and the Arts Council for Wyoming County, and also the Wyoming County Rural Arts Initiative all kind of supported this idea originally about a year ago. So without them, we wouldn't be able to do it.
Don't you just love ideas?
I have a million of them.
I know, and they come to you almost like a child, and they have their own power. They have their own mind. They're sort of their own DNA, and they just come to you. And how do you work that through? Do you listen to it? Do you listen to the idea, or do you sort of take the idea and say, "This is what we're going to do," or how? Just in a minute or less. I'm sorry. How do you work with that idea? If you have a million ideas, how do you know that's the one I'm going to focus on?
I don't know sometimes. But I think that's where I don't have to feel like I have to have all of the answers. I think I can have a a nugget of an idea, and then that's where I rely on my collaborators.
Yeah.
I'm very much a collaborative artist,
Wonderful.
and I don't ever want to be able to be in a room by myself having to come up with it all on my own, because I can't.
Right.
And nor is that fun for me. I like people, and I like working with people, and they have as good ideas, if
Sure.
not better,
Sure.
than me. So if I can spark the first thought
Yeah.
and then get them to play with me,
Right.
going back to improv,
Right.
you know, you have two people in a room, you say something, another person responds, and then you start to build it together. That's how
right.
I always
That's
prefer to
right.
work.
And I think that is harmony. That I love that too, just to see how the idea comes through everyone,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I have no
come to
ownership of
life.
the idea. You know, this
Yeah.
is ours,
Yeah,
and it
it's
can't
to
be
serve.
done without the community, and it can't be done
Right.
without the other artists. So if
Good.
I can at least provide the initial spark, hopefully other people can help me make it come to life.
Good. Now we're going to have to wrap it up soon.
Okay.
Can you believe it? It's gone so
This
fast.
has been gone really fast, yeah.
No, two things. I want to ask about A Christmas Carol for
Sure.
December.
Sure.
I saw it last year. It was magical,
Thank you.
beautiful, and you're going to do it again, correct?
Yeah, we did.
Do you have the dates for that?
Well, we to let everybody know, I know you're referencing Shake on the Lake's rendition of A Christmas Carol this last holiday season in 2017. So thank you
Okay.
for mentioning that. It's also a puppet-inspired version of the Christmas
Right.
Carol.
It's a
and
lovely
our-
synthesis, really, of
It
what
is.
of everything you're doing.
Yeah, we started working puppetry in some of our Shake shows as far back as 2014, so it's nice that this felt like the right time to start a festival like this. But with The Christmas Carol, it's a story that I love, and I've done it maybe 4 or 5 times in my life, and to be able to do it again with my company in the community that I really love meant a lot to me, and especially in this way where we had 2 actors and 1 puppeteer playing all of the parts and really trying to embrace some of the elements in the story that I think are actually, it's a ghost story in a lot of ways, and Dickens really writes this really hard and oftentimes horrific imagery in what Scrooge is experiencing in his memories and what he's being haunted by, and to be able to try to bring that to life through puppetry, I think really gave it a heightened level, which I really appreciated.
It's
and
beautiful.
We're going to be bringing it back during the holiday season in 2018
Good.
as well.
Great. Okay, last question. Where do you see Perry in 5 years? What is your vision? What would you like to see? And
Yeah.
how can we help that vision be realized?
Well, I think what people have already done is incredibly humbling to me, and I'm eternally grateful that people listen to my ideas and then they come and they support the work. And I couldn't be more grateful for that. And I hope that that continues. What I see moving forward, you know, if I can even go past 5 years, Chautauqua and Silver Lake were started at the same time as sister institutions. Chautauqua has
I like where you're
blossomed.
going with this.
Chautauqua has blossomed into this
Yes.
artist colony that is really well known all around the country. And Silver Lake kind of befell on bad luck and fires, which destroyed a lot of the infrastructure of what they really set up at that time. So my life goal is to try to make Silver Lake on the same level as Chautauqua. And by bringing Shakespeare and maybe a puppet festival and seeing all of the other things that people are already doing, Lauren Penman is doing great work with the Silver Lake experience. And the Arts Council for Wyoming County is always bringing in incredible things to the area. There are people that are working tirelessly, I think, to really make this area arts and cultural destination, and that's what I want. I want people to come because they know Perry is a place where they can come and see something they maybe have never seen before. It's easy, it's accessible, it can be watched by anyone, and it's here. It's homegrown in Perry, New York. Why not Perry? Why not?
Why not?
Exactly.
Good. Well, thank you, Josh.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
I really
for all
appreciate
you're
the time,
doing.
Jessie.
And thank you for joining us. And we'll see you again on the Perry Connection.